Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to Tyler and to Michael and everyone at Writers and Books for hosting. Let's see. I think I'm just going to read because we're going to have a conversation and answer questions later. So I'm just going to try to go straight through. So this book is about William Blake. The subtitle is The Visionary Life of William Blake. There's a lot that I leave out about his life, but I stick pretty close to the visionary experiences. The first poem is Against Newton, and it is dedicated to Jason Whitaker, a Blake scholar who teaches at the University of Lincoln. It has an epigraph: "He who sees the ratio only sees himself only." Newton, yes, but not under an apple tree or in Cambridge or beneath stars or in some abstracted mathematical ether. No, Newton ass-planted on a seafloor boulder. Newton among anemones, among corals and urchins, shells and seaweeds, starfish and indecipherable watery forms. Newton hunching away from the pinks and fuchsias, the ochres and aquamarines, hunching down toward the plain, blanched white parchment, down under his compass, down at his feet. For Blake, bad ideas warp bodies. Hence, Newton's Eurozenic compass crouch, cf. Ancient of Days. Even the sideways sweep of the two pink anemones' hair-like tentacles are just like Urizen's long hair and beard. The two painted only a year apart. Same error, overprivileging reason. Virgin Newton looking oh so Greek. Doryphorus only with terrible posture, hunched over his knees. Your Greek philosophy, Blake tells Dias, teaches that man is righteous in his vegetated specter. Newton drawn away from imaginative forms toward his own diagram in his vegetated specter, forefinger extended, so unlike the sizzling between God and man in the Sistine Chapel. Blake believing each was nothing without the other. Newton's finger pointing not to God nor to the human, but to a cold, hard line segment, the abstract. Infernally, Newton infers from the world a clock-making Pantocrator God who set a mechanical universe into motion, then left it alone, the same dull round over again. A triangle concerned with a triangle. Newton, diagrammer of light spectrum, cartographer of diffraction, a man of vision but not vision, which is why Blake puts him at the bottom of the sea, oblivious to a place he'd never been and should be eager to see, but is not. His white smock has fallen off because he tried to hang it on a principle. Just out of frame from below, the bottom of the sea's surface is silver. There, the sea glows green as sun-slit grape skin, sardines dodging trawling nets. The fishermen, you can hear their singing bouncing off sea cliff stones, scraps of melody darting into the water. Atop this cliff, a semaphore tower stands, catching echoes of the song, which rises skyward, sunward, until the sun takes off his mask, drinking in the blue light emanating off the water. Could drink all the blue there's ever been and will ever be. There will never be enough, which is fine, because the wine dark sea is also made of light, and whatever it takes today, it will give back tomorrow, and will give it back bright, bright blue. See, this next poem is called it has one of my favorite words in the English language in it. The town where William Blake lived in a cottage at the south coast of England is called Felpham, and it's just a very lovely word, so I had to write this poem. His Felpham cottage. Flint cobble, Bognor stone rubble, walls in places rough cast and whitewashed, the rest red brickwork. 3 brick chimney stacks, original thatched roof, now wrapped in chicken wire, inside a yellow-white plaster, the ceiling beams exposed, stained espresso brown, battened doors, sash windows, a flower garden where Blake kept his vegetable patch. Here did those feet, here under the same roof over me. From this door, Blake would walk but 2 minutes, striding past cornfields to reach the wild, unrestrainable sea and the end of England. He once wrote, "A ladder of angels descends into Felpham." Felpham, where I see a ladder to be under Blake's same roof, to touch the door frame he passed through, is to stand on distant steps of the same ancient ladder. Places marked by history have side rails running through the rungs of time. The rails connect and separate. If you grip them and lean with all your weight, you can feel the ladder's structure, its camber and weightedness. Blake is here and nowhere, never and always. He holds the opposite end of the same wooden beam I feel in my empty hand. This poem is called "The Ghost of a Flea," and I have a bunch of close-ups in here, actually. So you don't really need to know anything about this other than he had a vision of this flea and then just drew exactly what he saw, which is how quite a lot of his art worked. The Ghost of a Flea. Blake's flea isn't a flea, but a flea's spiritual reality translated humanoid into this hulking demonic tongue thruster. Its hunching musculature mid big stride, right hand pinching its tail or a dagger handle or thorn, a golden goblet or basket or bowl held in its left, from which he drinks and drinks to slake his bloodthirst. If the flea were large as a horse, Varley wrote, it'd depopulate a great portion of the country. And J.T. Smith said, Blake said, were that lively little fellow the size of an elephant, he could bound from Dover to Calais in one leap. Its skin, scaly, reptilian, thickly bulked neck under small head, vertebrae popping out above the shoulders, eyes bulged, tongue licking the air in eagerness for his blood cup, dragon wings above ears, fanning back, and in the floorboards in front of his left shin, ever so faintly, an actual flea. But Blake's flea crosses a stage, curtains on the other side, and well beyond the curtains a cosmic background, astral, a comet's fabulously long tail dragging diagonally down. And in the curtains themselves, in the stars, even in the flea's saurian skin, Blake's worked thin gold leaf bits, and into the tempera he's powdered gold foil, giving the whole work an edge of muted fire, a feeling of molten metal coursing under skin, this clash of contraries, human bestial, infernal celestial, at once familiar and otherworldly. As he worked, Blake said to Varley, I see him now before me, as we do. Not the evidence of what Blake saw, but the darkly aureate shimmer of its envisaging. Okay, we'll see how long. This is probably the last one. This is called At Bunhill Fields Burial Ground, which is where Blake is buried. It's a dissenters graveyard, and when I first visited it, they still didn't know where his remains were, and since then, they think that they know exactly where he is. I'm skeptical, but anyway, as a result, he actually has like two stones there. In the dissenters' graveyard, time's erasing headstones, sharp outlines, and unchiseling inscriptions, grass overgrown, moss spreading, sepulchres held intact by ratchet tie-down straps, weather slowly grinding stone into sands stretching far and away. There's Bunyan, the path to Cromwell's closed. Defoe has a towering obelisk, and below, under a fig tree and a little off to the side, is this. Nearby lie the remains of the poet-painter William Blake and his wife, Catherine Sophia. A smattering of small gifts strewn about the headstone's foot, a cactus, a candle, a match, 2 clementines, aluminum foil, a yellow wrapper, 2 white oven-baked clay figurines in phallic and ionic shapes. Atop the stone, mostly coins, guitar picks, and pebbles, a bottle cap, a clothespin, a ring. Blake would dismiss grave sites' fixation upon the bodily. After all, quote, mental things are alone real, what is called corporeal, nobody knows of its dwelling place. It is in fallacy. Why, he was less afraid of death than walking into the next room. If you art the food of worms, how great thy blessing. especially if a worm is to you an infant wrapped in the lily's leaf. Blake's own worms did their post-mortem work so long ago, I cannot even say Blake is under my boot soles without betraying his imagination. So I think of Blake's life ending with a vision we can't know. Blake's last vision is the silence of the salt on your tongue instead of the honey you were expecting. It is a bird breaking into light. It is deep red wine poured over a cold stone and sopped up by moss, a woman turning into a nightingale, a newborn lamb in a whiteout of snow, a tiger halved by deep shadow, a never before seen sun rising above dark rocks. And that's all. Thank you. I wanted to mention I have buttons of some of the figures you saw this evening. Urizen, the Ghost of the Flea, and also Newton, should you buy a copy of the book. And without further ado, here is Kathryn Cowles.
Okay. Jeff and I have never had books come out at the same time before, and so we've never been able to do kind of book release readings together before, so this is our very first one. So it's a very exciting night. Thanks Tyler and everyone at Writers and Books and at Ampersand for making this possible. It really is a delight. This is indeed a book about a character from my first book, kind of pulled later into life, who is exactly the same age as me, as it turns out. And she's an artist, and she makes a bunch of artworks and writes poems about them. So there's a kind of a museum of the mind quality to some of these works, but also there are a bunch of collages. So I'm going to be a bit collage heavy today as we go through this, and I'll read a couple of other poems. So they all have titles that look like museum placards. So the first one is this: Self-Portrait as Useful Domestic Item, Eleanor, 1979, 2. Magazine Clippings, poem, 2014. Use this nozzle for small messes, this tube for larger, this buffer, this scrubber, this shiner and gauge, this super deluxe dusting brush, telescoping wand, retractable power cord. Yes, 50% more suction, complete with separator, tenderizer, burner, and cookie press, egg beater, and wringer washer, and headlight. Did I mention it's self-propelled? Really, just another arm to have attached to my own arm. You see now how I am the useful kind of multi-purpose tool. Okay. This one is called Wife. And this one doesn't have an image attached to it. Wife, Eleanor, 1979, 2. Ceramic room, robotic arm, blowtorch, paper towels, hair, 2015. I tie the word wife on my jaw like a scarf for my toothache. Everything the wife has is blank. Walls, the bathtub, carpeting, couch, the kitchen, especially the kitchen, with its white floor, white countertops, white tile, backsplash. The white of a white kitchen can only be theoretically clean. In practice, there are specks. In practice, fallen hairs, drifted dust. Sometimes someone always spills the soup. Sometimes someone always breaks the white plate or later steps deep on a left sliver of soup bowl glass and thus, among other things, messes up the floor. Even the light from the cloudless sun is dirtied by old rain left on the other side of the very window one looks through. And anyway, even if everything else was otherwise spotless, still my very eye would ruin it with looking as I do out of the eye hole of a woman who is a wife, who is a wife, who is a wife. I make a pure white life-sized kitchen out of a single vast surface of hard ceramic cooked in a larger than kitchen-sized brick oven. A hard kitchen pulled from a mold, a smooth fitted shell, the stove stuck to the refrigerator to the wall, all hard, white, inoperable, yes, but absolutely clean. I install a rigorous and complex multi-surface sensed video monitored alarm system such that if a single hair, a single fleck of a single hair falls, then lands, sudden red lights spin their terrible loudness like storm sirens, like actual storms, and a mechanized whole blowtorch emerges robotic on a metal arm from within the very wall and takes aim and incinerates the offending whatever, leaving nothing, not a scratch on the heat-proof whatever, leaving no mark at all but slight smoke residue that the arm wipes clean with a wet paper towel, then wipes the wet paper towel mark dry, then wipes it again. The solid surface gleams like a sudden tooth. I am not in the scene. There is nowhere here safe for a wife to stand, which is a metaphor which stands for something you see, but just what I seem to have lost to let slip behind its stark, its bone-like blank, its equal sign, sharp. Okay, this is another one with a visual image attached to it. It's called Self-Portrait as If, Then. Eleanor, 1979-2, magazine clippings, poem, 2016. Yes, I am new, sharpened, am on edge, but if I just hold my arm right here, my legs just so, if I just keep my face exactly as it is, there, you see, I'm fine. I'm just exactly fine. These are kind of disturbing poems. I have a section called Wife, and I'm reading those ones and realizing that back to back, they aren't the whimsical, playful ones so much as the kind of stark, startling ones. This one has a little more whimsy to it. Self-Portrait as Empty Woman Shape, Eleanor, 1979-2, magazine clippings, paint, poem, 2016. And it has an epigraph from Robert Duncan's Often I Am Permitted to Return to a Meadow. That should say a meadow, not as meadow. Where from the shadows that are forms fall, where from fall all architectures I am. The women are cutouts of women, of real women. The cutouts are real, but they are not real women. They are real cutouts. Real cutout, real cutout, real cutout, real cutout, real cutout, real, cutout, cutout, real, cutout, cutout, real, cutout, etc. A woman is a cutout of a concept. Either she fits or she doesn't fit in the original shape. Either she's willing to be put back into the paper or she is not. She is not. You can cut new women out from the shape. You can cut many new women, but then you see you can't fit us all back into the shape. The shape changes with the cutting a little each time so that the woman cut most recently can't cover the women cut originally, and vice versa. No one can cover anyone. No one can cover anyone, the rules of cutting being such as they are, and physics, and the empty woman shape is the opposite of a cover. The real women, or rather the women from the real photographs, are long gone, gone off to a completely different shape. The shape of real women is completely different from itself. It can't cover you, let alone time. Better off to go cut yourself out of it. Page left intentionally blank. Okay, let's see. So these ones are moving more toward the end of the book, toward a shift away from the wife section of the book. And this one is called Self-Portrait as Mythological Figure, Eleanor, 1979 too. Magazine Clippings, poem, 2023. I am on the move. My mind is attached to my body at the hip. My hip is attached to my hand. I use my hand to write. I yes my yes. I have found the good light. I am looking myself in the eye. I have free use of my limbs, and look how very forward I can go. Okay, and this is the last one I'm going to read tonight. It's the book is out of chronological order, and this is chronologically the first art piece in the book, but it's the second to last poem in the book. It's called Clouds, Eleanor, 1979 too. Acrylic on canvas, 2005. This is a painting of a woman. She is naked in her kitchen. I paint her some clothes, a dress, and a long sweater with a belt, some high-heeled boots. She is still cold. I paint her a winter coat with a woolen collar and expensive gloves. The gloves are red cashmere on the inside and soft black leather on the outside. I paint her hands into the hearts of the gloves. I paint the new red rug leading out of the kitchen. I paint the whole apartment. I paint the door. I paint its thick locks, its gold chains. I paint its layers of paint. I paint the outside of the door, the peephole, the hallway with its hotel carpeting. I paint the wooden stairs and the mailboxes. I paint the stoop. I paint the bicycle tied to the gate. I paint the length of the street, and I paint in trees. I paint a leashed bulldog walking the length of the street. The bulldog turns a corner. I paint the corner, the whole city block, and the next block, and the next. I paint the thoroughfare out to the sea. I paint the whole downtown. I paint the cityscape as seen from a fishing boat 3 miles out. Airplanes circle through clouds in the sky waiting to land. People sit in tightly gridded configurations in the airplanes, reading and hurtling through space at unthinkable speeds. This is a painting of the people in the airplanes. This is a painting of clouds. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Fancy meeting you here.
I know. We hardly have the chance to talk to one another because we have 3 children, so this is nice. I'm going to ask you a question first.
Okay.
So what the audience may not know, and what you would never tell them, is, but you all should know, that Kathryn started writing many of these poems while breastfeeding our daughter when she was less than a year old. Actually, she was less than 6 months old probably when you started this. And she was a slow eater, and so Kathryn had to sit completely in the dark. She couldn't use her phone, she couldn't use a reading light because then Remy would stop eating, and so she just had to sit in the complete dark, in silence, in a gliding chair and feed our daughter. And then she started composing poems in her head and memorizing them.
So as not to lose my mind in this situation.
Even so. Yeah, it's great motivation, but and then she would like run downstairs and then scribble them out, and there were like whole complete, I'm not saying like final versions, they were drafts and she revised, I know that, but they came out like they had a beginning, middle, and end, and a shape to them and everything. So my question for you is, how did that method of operating shape the poems that you wrote and affect how this book became what it is?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, before this book, I was writing really short poems, and kind of like mini thoughts connected to landscape. It was like a land-oriented book, and I think this caused me to have to think in terms of image followed by image followed by image, because I couldn't remember the language so much as the image and then attach the language to it. And so there was something really different in the construction of it. And I actually have partial facial aphasia, so I really struggle to hold faces or any image in my head. Like a lot of people, most people, 95% of people, when they close their eyes, and like I say, picture a red apple, you can picture an apple that is in fact red, but I can't. I just have like the language around it. And the same thing is true, like if I try to picture my children's faces, I can't. I can identify them, but it's only because I don't know why it is. I don't exactly know how I can identify things at all. So when I say I constructed it using images, they weren't like images in the sense where I could picture the thing. They were more like concepts held together, concepts of an image or detail work held together, or almost diagrams. I have one that's a Rube Goldberg poem where this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. And that was largely like logic. Like I had to have the boot on a stick, kick the ball and roll it down, the side of the thing, and kind of think my way through it. So they're really different poems.
Did you get the logical sequence and like the mechanistic causal chain? Like, did you think of that first and then you came up with the language for it, or was the language simultaneous with the logic of the Rube Goldberg machine?
With the Rube Goldberg one, I thought of it bit by bit. I knew it was going to get bigger and bigger. So it ends with like flamethrower. There's a live audience and there are arrows going over, flaming arrows flying over people's heads, and then flamethrowers burn things and they fall on the people's heads, and then big pianos fall in different notes of a song that Eleanor can't get out of her head. So it's like it gets very dramatic indeed, but it starts out quite small. Yeah,
cool.
I mean, the short version of a question I have for you, Jeff, is why William Blake? But kind of the longer version of the question we've been talking a lot about lately, with various constellating conversations have landed on this idea of people doing things, being compelled to do things for reasons that they're not totally sure of, but that then the logic of those things operates. We were talking about it as like Roland Barthes' idea of the studium versus the punctum in Camera Lucida, which is a wonderful book. But he talks about photographs having a studium, like a kind of background context, but there's something called the punctum that pierces you, that kind of reaches out and like slaps you from within the piece. And that sometimes, and that thing can be different for different people. And so sometimes it seems to me that the thing, as a human being, but also as a poet, the thing that will slap me, sometimes I can't explain why. But there's a certain rightness to it, and I'm wondering if you have like a sense of what the rightness is about William Blake, and about that. What is the punctum about William Blake for you?
Wow, that's a great question, and I think in some ways I think you kind of answered it actually. But so I'll give you I'll give the mundane part, and then part of like why Blake is because he's so incredibly weird. He is so weird, in the best way. I don't mean that as a pejorative, but like he was so strange. I mean, he started seeing like visions when he was 4 years old, and then saw them his whole life, and then like literally saw them with his eyeball when he looked around. And as a result of that, many people think that he's just completely mad. And I don't think he was at all. He has a completely consistent philosophy. He invented his own mythology. it's a syncretic construction, and he takes lots of parts from different sources and places, but it's entirely his own. When you think of, people working before him, like Milton had a Bible map for how to do what he needed to do for his epics. Blake had no map whatsoever. He had to find it and, like lay out the tracks in front of the train while it's going. And the fact that he worked in like multiple media and like visual stuff as well as poetry and all of that, I find to be so impressive. So why Blake? So I think I think there's that. I think also Blake is so weird, like another way in which he's weird, which there are, let me count the ways, oh, so many. But that he's like a household name. Everybody knows Blake, and he's like really famous, and everyone like can recognize his main images. And yet there are huge portions of his writing that people just don't bother with at all. Like, don't read Milton, his epic work, or Jerusalem, or the Four Zoas, which Northrop Frye called the greatest abortive masterpiece in literature, which is a wonderful honor to have, I think. So I don't know. For all those reasons, he's kind of like a contradiction, and he embraces contraries and these. And so for me, he's somebody who never really sits still. Like, it requires, things have to be perpetually moving and active in order to read them in a way that feels consistent with his, core underlying beliefs and all of that. And so part of it is that I just I love him and I wanted to spend time with him. And so like I'll write about him, and then I'm forced to research what I'm writing about. And then, and so it was fun. But that's all to not really answer the question, because I think the answer is probably there. Like, as much as I try to come up with an answer why, I can't answer it. And it probably is because there is some punctum, only I don't know what it is, but it keeps me coming back to him. I'm really drawn to him. He's so stubborn. He gets so fucking angry all the time. He writes vicious things in his marginalia, and he has epigrams that are just absolutely brutal. I mean, he got arrested because like a drunk soldier entered his garden and he grabbed him by the ear and hauled him up the street. And I saw the doorway where he was arrested. In fact, that building is now for sale for like $2 million or something. And he could have been hanged. He was tried for sedition in Chichester and nearly died. And I don't know. So he has a fascinating life. And the fact that he, like, I don't know, for me also, the fact that he had visions, I feel like the third medium of his artistry is his life and the visionary things that he did. And that was another impulse that I was trying to connect with in the book. Do we have time for more questions?
Yeah, why don't we check and see, does anyone in the audience have questions they'd like to ask Geoffrey and Kathryn?
I do want to give a compliment. I really do like how you delivered your, like the way you say it, with feeling.
Thank you.
Is there any methods you have for rehearsing poems, or do you read aloud as you draft, or no?
Sometimes I do. In another life, like 25 years ago, I was a musician, so I played a lot of shows, and I did a lot of things in that vein, and so I think that translates weirdly well to poetry sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't at all, but I try to rehearse, or I stumble. Now my vision is going. I'm like of a certain age where I'm probably gonna have to get reading classes for this book tour I'm going on. But so now I'm kind of just hoping I don't stumble over the words, and that I've read it enough that I remember that it comes off easily.
You mentioned that Eleanor was making art, or writing the poems are coming after, but I'm just curious about the back and forth between the art and the reflections, and when you write and then Eleanor makes art. So how does those two things interact?
It originally, Eleanor's name was in the book was Kathryn Cowles, and but was not me. But it was an artist called Kathryn Cowles, and then I got in trouble when a really lovely publication said, we want to publish your poem, but we want to publish it side by side with the artwork. And it was a piece that involved like cutting out an entire room and floor out of my house and sticking it in a museum and like sleeping in it at night. And I thought it was self-evident that it wasn't real, but it turns out it wasn't self-evident. So I had to, say, oh, well, actually, and I promised David Weiss, my colleague, that I wouldn't apologize, but I would say, well, here's what my project is, or something like that. And they took the poem anyway, but I decided it would be easier if Eleanor didn't share my name. And I always was accused of secretly being Eleanor with my first book, and so I thought, oh, I know a name I can use for this. But then it was wonderful because I could be totally fictional and just make things up that had nothing to do with me, and that made things a lot easier through the process of it. But then, and I also started making the art pieces. I did the poems for quite a while before I did any of the art pieces, but then it just felt, I'd done hybrid form stuff in my previous book, and it just felt right, so I just did it.
Yeah, Robert.
Hi, sorry. This is for both of you. First of all, thank you. It's so much fun to get to see both of you in this. So both of you are using phrases or phrastic adjacent things, both of you to, in some ways, like indirectly work at this obscured biography. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the ways that you conceived of that sort of hidden biography that's behind and around the poems. I mean, in part because there's this sort of timeline to the paintings, in part because of the timeline of the visions are also sequential. So yeah. Is there sort of a biography in your head hidden back there? How do you develop that?
Yeah, because my answer is the most boring, so we'll do mine first. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, usually organizing a manuscript would be like very difficult in terms of finding and I think for Kathryn, she had more adventures in that regard than I did. And I knew I didn't want to base the book based on his work, because I didn't want it to be like poetic criticism or something like that. I'm not a Blake scholar, and I didn't want to purport to be one either. So the first thing I started doing was binging Blake biographies, and I read a bunch of them. And then I kind of started sorting through the strange, weird, magical Blake versus the, like when he went on trial, like that's just all mundane, boring stuff, and I don't want to touch any of that. So, but that's all pretty obvious, really. So it wasn't much work. But I was happy to pay attention to it, because I think a lot of people, in part because they think he's crazy, they want to dismiss that stuff, or they don't want to touch it, or they think they don't quite know what to do with it. I was listening to a Blake podcast not too long ago, as I do, and it's just embarrassing. But there was a guest on there who wanted to make the argument that, and you can find a fill in the blank for whatever, but that Blake was this synesthetic, and that you could understand all of his visions as a form of synesthesia and whatnot. And I don't know. That's just horribly reductive, and like, why would you want to do that to something that's interesting and kill it like that? But so I was looking to almost like do the opposite to that kind of approach, because those kinds of approaches are a dime a dozen now, and or he's autistic, or he's whatever, and he could have been all those things or any of them, but it doesn't really matter, and that's not what makes him interesting to me. But yeah, so I just tracked all the weird that I was drawn to. Yeah.
I have always been interested in how visual arts operate as metaphors. Like, you go in and you look at, frequently I'll go to an art museum and I'll get a sense particularly with contemporary art, of what somebody's feeling or experiencing and what they're drawn to based on the art itself, but there's no biography built into it. It's all kind of obscured or hidden. And I really liked the idea of writing a story. I have a plot clearly in my mind of what happens, but it's hard. The book's anti-chronological. It'd be a little bit hard to piece it together, although there are some clear events that happen. But I really liked the idea of doing an entirely metaphorical biography of somebody with art pieces standing in for the emotions or the things being experienced, but none of the kind of no given actual biography. So I think you're exactly right to be thinking about that. That's exactly what I had in mind as I was
When
writing
did you
it.
start developing the narrative? Like, how far into it? Was it like from the get-go, or was it later?
It was after I abandoned myself as the character, and could kind of get fictional, and that was important to me, to be able to make a kind of narrative and that sort of thing.
Interesting.
I think we should use our remaining time to mingle a little bit, buy some books, and so let's give both Geoffrey and Kathryn